The Ducks jerseys have apparently been partially leaked, and we're also going to talk about draft stuff. I'm joined by a special guest on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason JD Hernandez, and joining me on this podcast is Danny Evans from the Sporting Tribune covering the Anaheim Ducks. Danny, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Jason. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah. So we got a bit to talk about today. I know you kind of have a heart out, so we'll try to get through as much as possible. And we're going to start not with prospects, not with draft stuff. We're going to start with a little preview that the Ducks gave us on their Twitter today. This will be in post, but I'll put a picture right now. So Twitter put up a rather somewhat mysterious post showing the new duck eyes, I guess we want to call it now. Is that what we want to call it?
We can use that name. That works for me.
Yeah. So for those of you on the video side, you can see that the classic orange jersey that the Ducks had, I think it's a classic because I love that logo, had the hockey mask with the black eye, but we see something with a darker orange eye. What's your initial thoughts on this little leak that we saw from the Ducks?
You know, it's hard to call it a leak when it comes from the official Twitter of the team. So
True.
I think it was maybe more of a pre-announcement than anything else.
Let's go with that pre-announcement.
It's so hard to judge based on, a tiny little eye and an eyebrow, which is, I didn't know Ducks had eyebrows. But I did say, when I first saw it, that the eye does look a little bit more mean and menacing than the eye in the previous logo, and I think that's what some Ducks have been clamoring for. I think since Disney first designed the original Ducks logo, they've been trying to shake free of that Disney image. That's what everybody knows this team for, even though Disney hasn't known the team in a long time. So I think this is a transition, along with all the other transitions that the Ducks are involved with. They're moving in a different direction with the team.
They're moving in a direction, but they're also going back to their roots and also kind of listening to their fans a little bit. We've seen the posts. We've seen fans asking to go back to the Wild Wing logo for what seems like years at this point. And from what little we see, it looks like they are trying to go back, somewhat redesigned. I will notice that on the picture that the Ducks showed, there's a little bit of a gold shimmery look on the eyebrow. So it's got a bit more dimension to it.
It does. And I think what they revealed today with this pre-announcement, if that's what we're calling it, is that the eggplant and teal are dead. We are not going back to eggplant and teal. We are orange, black, and gold from here on out.
Which I've grown to accept. I mean, as much as I love the eggplant, as much as I love the jade, as much as I love the old school colors, there is a reason that they are going to orange. One, for their Orange County roots. And I think I read this somewhere. It might have been on another article from, I want to say, The Athletic, that kind of alluded to the fact that they're really going full forward or full force with the new OC vibe that's currently being built right now, as far as I know. I mean, I've seen the construction going on there right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been over by Honda Center in the last 2 or 3 months, you've seen the demolition that's going on. Both of the long-standing parking lots that were used by Ducks fans for Ducks games are now raised and being prepared for something else to go there. So the team is definitely making a shift. Gary Bettman was in Anaheim this past season talking about OC vibe, and I think the opening of that area around the arena is going to represent a sort of a relaunch of this team under the Verbeek and Samueli leadership.
It's important that you mentioned that too, because the Ducks are trying to build their new history right now with the Samuelis, who have been around since 2005. So they've been around a while, actually. No, 0506, because it was a strike. So it's been a long time. And I do like this path that the Samuelis are taking because they want that big event in Anaheim. They would like to have an all-star game. They would like to have at least an NHL draft, which this year is in Las Vegas. I think this is a good step forward to go back to the rebrand and maybe bring something back like that feels new.
I agree, and I think it is. It's all coordinated. I mean, you say what you will about the Ducks and their management, but this relaunch of the team, is so well coordinated because it's timed with, the team that Verbeek is putting together. Now we have Cutter Gauthier in the fold. Now we have 2 first-round draft picks in 10 days or so. And this team, as Verbeek said to the season ticket holders at an event over the course of the season, he wants to compete this year. He wants this team to take a giant leap. And, when this marketing is ready, when OC Vibe is ready, I think this team will be ready if they're not ready sooner than that.
I'll ask you this. What else aside from OC Vibe do you think needs to be done to garner one of those massive events to Anaheim?
I think we need to win. I think winning is a panacea for a lot of people. And, this team hasn't done a lot of that in the last several years. And that's, we've been taking our medicine and rebuilding very, very slowly. Verbeek has been methodical in terms of getting off the books these contracts for some older players, players that don't fit his style of play. And, he's bringing in Gauthier. He's talked about wanting to bring in a right-handed defenseman. He's wanted to get another right-handed shot on the top 6. If he's able to pull those things off during this off season, I think there's a lot of reason to be excited about the future of this team.
I actually had 2 items on my list, and trying to win is one of them. The other one, not having to do with the hockey, they've got to update the arena a little bit. It is a 31-year-old arena. Yes, the joke is that Ponda still doesn't have escalators, and parts of the arena is a little bit dated. So I think that's got to be kind of on their list as well, right?
I would imagine so. And, I have no proof or evidence of this, but, I think that probably will be part and parcel of the OC Vibe project. I think, what they're planning to do with OC Vibe, if you've seen the renderings, is really create a community area around the arena. And, if you watch the NFL drafts and you watch some of the NHL drafts that have been on TV, like the cities that have hosted drafts, they've got their stuff together. They have a location, a destination for their hockey clubs. And I believe that's the intention here. This team wants to build an experience to go with its games. And I think we all have reason to be excited about what they're putting together.
I mean, I'll just allude to this on a personal level. The team I work for, the Firebirds, they're hosting the All-Star game next season. And part of that has to do with the atmosphere, the modern arena, but also because they're winning. And I still believe that Pat Verbeek is trying to get a very solid product on the ice, and he's getting towards that.
I think so. And, it's been difficult for Ducks fans to be patient with this team. I mean, they have been dismal for the last few years.
Yeah.
This is our 3rd consecutive year drafting in the top 3. I could be wrong about that. Definitely our 2nd consecutive year. And, we've had to wait and bide our time for this team to transition. It's not a quick change.
Yeah, I'm actually going by my head. I think it's 3 out of the last 4 years because number 3, then number 10. They had a number 10 pick in there.
Tavish was first, and then Carlson, and then whomever we take at 3 this year, assuming we stay at 3. This is what rebuilding looks like. It takes a while. It's painful. There's a lot of turmoil and tension to go through. But I think, based on the transactional moves that we've been seeing, we're taking a step. The team is taking a step. And while it may not compete next year, I guess it remains to be seen what transactions come to pass. but I don't think we'll be drafting in the top 3 next year, given the amount of talent on this team.
I will agree with that 1,000%. And I just had to look back because I wanted to make sure. So this past year, 2023, it was a number 2 pick. 2022 was the number 10 where they got Pavel Mintyukov.
Right.
So not quite 3 years in a row, but 3 out of the last 4 seasons, they've gotten a top 3 pick.
Right. The point remains. I mean, that's what a rebuilding team looks like, right? And three top 3 picks should be enough to kickstart any team. And given the other players that they've got, we're starting to look like a hockey club again.
Yeah, and given the amount of money that they have to spend, by the way, this offseason, which is a lot of money.
I think it's in excess of 33 million or something like that.
Yeah, a little over 33.
Yeah.
And they still need to spend a few million to get to the cap floor even. So what we're going to do is take a quick break and we'll talk about prospects because we talked about the draft. We alluded to it. So we'll talk about that on the other side. And now a brief word from FanDuel. And it is summertime, and that means baseball and so much more. And you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's also the Stanley Cup Finals. So what are you waiting for? That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the final MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook and the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. And please, folks, gamble responsibly. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, locked in with Jason JD Hernandez and joined by Danny Evans from the Sporting Tribune. So we alluded to this already, but there's a very high draft pick that the Ducks have this season. They have the number 3 pick, and it's looking like the number 31 pick. It doesn't look like Edmonton's going to win this series against the Florida Panthers. Stranger things have happened. You never know. But the way it's looking, 3 and 31. And they also have that 35th pick, if I'm not mistaken. So they've got 2 picks in that 30-ish range. But We'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about that number 3 pick. Because there's been a number of mock drafts that have gone out. Locked On Network recently had their own mock draft, which I will talk about in a different episode. But I just want to go over the mock draft very quickly and get your thoughts on the mock draft that we've had for Locked On Ducks. So number 1 pick, obviously, is going to be none other than Macklin Celebrini. That we saw coming. Is anybody surprised by that?
I'm not.
Nope.
It's his team, so it's a perfect pick for them. I mean, San Jose's been down in the cellar with us for quite a while, and they've got some good young talent, some players that they've drafted recently. A teammate of Cutter Gautier's from Boston College, and as another team in the same division, it's time for San Jose to take a step too, and I think this will do it.
Number 2, we had wow, I just had it and I lost it. There we go. Demidov. That one again, not surprising.
I might take issue with that slightly. I think that they, based on everything I've read, which is really just speculation, but it seems like they like Levshunov a lot. They were the only team that took him out to dinner at the Combine, and it could be either. Could be Demidov, could be Levshunov. Nobody knows.
And when I read that, I would think the Blackhawks are going to take one of either Demidov or Levshunov. And at the time we did this, I think the host for Locked On Blackhawks was kind of back and forth on that pick. And I would have taken whatever was left over out of those 2 picks. They opted for Demidov. And you know where that's going to leave me is with Artem Levshunov, who, as you mentioned at the start, is the right-handed defenseman that the Ducks so desperately need right now. And so let's talk about Levshunov for a hot minute.
Sure.
So, go ahead.
Go ahead. I've watched some video of Levshunov. I think I'm personally not as high on him as a lot of people are, but that's irrelevant. I mean, the scouts, the NHL scouts, the people who do hockey for a living, they love this kid. I've seen him have some defensive lapses. And I personally just wonder how many offensive defensemen does this team need? We have Zellweger, we have Fowler, we have Minchikov, we have all these guys on the blue line, Zellweger, who can shoot and score and make dynamic plays on the back end. But what this team lacks is stay-at-home defensemen, guys who are not there to score, but who are to prevent the other team from scoring. And that's why when I hear people talking about Salayev and some other defensemen who are less prone to scoring and more prone to defend, I personally feel like that's what the Ducks need, but I'm not the guy sitting in the GM's office. So I will accept whatever choice is made. But for Levshunov, my suspicion is that he might drop a few spots.
I'm wondering that now too. I mean, okay, so I'll ask you then. Actually, I'll round out the top 5 on the mock draft that we had. Caden Lidstrom went number 4, and Tij Ginla went number 5, and then Zane Perek went number 6. So if you had the choice, who would be your number 3 pick?
Wow. Fortunately for Ducks fans, I don't have the number 3 pick, but I wish I could give you an easy answer. I've watched a lot of video on all these guys, and there is just no consensus. Nobody has any idea what Verbeek is going to do. We've heard over the offseason that he wants a right-handed D-man. We've heard that he wants another top 6 forward. Is Demidov a top 6 forward that we can use? He's very small, but he's extremely talented. Salayev, I vacillate. I think that he has some video that it just drops your jaw. And he skates like a gazelle, but he's 6'7".
Mm-hmm.
It's just ridiculous. Is that what Verbeek wants? It's a big body, which is what he's been drafting lately, 6'2", 6'3", 6'7". I watched some video today of a player named Bennett Seneca, and I was very impressed by what I saw with him. All the D-men, Zeev Buyam, Parek, all these guys, they all have incredible skill. Are they worthy of a number 3 pick? Probably not.
Why not?
But I don't think it behooves me to answer the question because I absolutely have no idea. It's all up to Pat Verbeek.
More with Danny Evans after this second intermission. We'll talk a little bit more on the other side. And now a brief word from Policygenius. Now, look, a lot of life is unpredictable, but good life insurance gives you peace of mind and a financial security net to protect against some of life's unknowns. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Once again, Policygenius helps you easily compare your options from America's top insurers in just a few clicks, and it is very trustworthy. There's thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. So get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com.
There's another name that I want to throw your direction, and this is more for the 30s picks that the Ducks have. And as this mock draft went on, I'm actually going to go all the way down to 31 because I actually have the entire draft on here. Spoiler alert for those on the Locked On Network. So I actually had 2 choices for my number 31 pick. I could have gone with Andrew Basha or Stian Solberg, and I like both of those guys. Since we're on the defensive side of things, I like Stian Solberg a lot. He's a young Norwegian kid, played at the World Juniors this past season, and probably one of the best defensive defensemen that are out there. And looking at some of the film from Solberg, I love his active stick. I love his awareness along the blue line, and especially on the penalty kill. Like, he has a great tendency. And the one player that I kind of thought about a little bit, just only because I've seen him play in the Calder Cup playoffs recently. John Hayden is a player that has scored 2 shorthanded goals in that way. And some of the film that I saw with Solberg, kind of that same fashion. He will get the puck, pry it loose, and just get a one-on-one opportunity on the penalty kill to get good shots. Not always goals, but at least get those good opportunities. And to your point, how many offensive defensemen do you need? You need a play killer, right?
Yeah, and Stolberg's a name that has a lot of helium right now. He's been rising up the draft boards. You're starting to hear fans talk about him, and I think the thing that I really like about him is that he's just a mean dude. He's not the kind of guy that's fun to play against. I think the fact that Anaheim sits at 31 in the first round may not be set in stone, because Verbeek also has 2 2s and 3 3rds, and 2 of the 3rds are in the top 3 of that round. So he has the assets to move up if he wants to. If there's another player, mid first or later in the first, but not as late as 31, that he wants to go up and get, he can do it. And so I think predicting that 31st pick is just a crapshoot. I mean, if we don't know what's going to happen at 3, how can we possibly know what's going to happen at 31?
If it remains at 31, let's be real here.
Exactly.
As you mentioned, they have the assets to do this. Do you think Verbeek would pull the trigger on a draft day trade like that?
I do. I have no insight or information suggesting that he will, but the thing that I always think about with Verbeek is the kind of player he was. And, you don't get a name like the Little Ball of Hate without earning it. And, we saw when he was in Detroit and when he was in Tampa Bay, they're not afraid to pull the trigger. And, if this team is making an aggressive move towards its future right now, and they're investing all these billions in OC Vibe and all these millions in players, Verbeek knows what he wants. And if I have zero doubt that if he wants somebody in the late first, like Perreault, like we talked about when he drafted Perreault in the first round, traded up to get him. That wasn't Verbeek, so never mind.
I was going to say, wait a minute.
But yeah, the point remains, Verbeek has nerves of steel, and he'll do whatever he needs to get the player he wants.
I think given everything with the past 6 seasons of not making the playoffs, this feels like the year that the Ducks need to get very aggressive in the draft and make some kind of moves. I don't think they would necessarily try to trade any players right now, although they do have a slew of prospects that they could trade that the Ducks might be able to part with or might be willing to part with. And I think if there was any year to do it, this is it, because there's some needs out there on the roster.
Yeah. And not only that, but Verbeek called his shot. He said at that season ticket holder event, I want this team to compete for the playoffs next year. And that's not verbatim, but that's exactly the kind of point he was making. And he's got to back that up. And, sitting pat at 31, that's more of a passive way to go about it, I guess. If there's a player he thinks can make a difference for this team, he'll do it.
My sincere thanks to Danny Evans for joining the podcast. Really appreciated Danny coming on. And you know what? Instead of cramming everything into one episode, we're going to make this a 2-part episode. So be sure to tune in tomorrow for part 2 of my conversation with Danny Evans, where we talk a little bit more about the draft, kind of dabble in free agency, and talk a little bit more about OC Vibes. So be sure to tune in for that. In the meantime, thank you very much once again to Danny Evans, and thanks to you fans for listening. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, among others. You could find me on Twitter X at StimpyJD. The show's Twitter X is at LO_Ducks. And you could find Danny Evans on Twitter X at Danny Evans TST. Once again, from the Sporting Tribune. Once again, thank you all for your continued support. It is so greatly appreciated. Don't forget, part 2 coming tomorrow. For Locked on Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason JD Hernandez, saying have a great rest of the day. Please remember to be safe out there, be kind to one another, and Ducks fly together.